So I'm up.
You're all set now.
Okay. Thanks everyone for being here. I want to thank our MAPC team, who's here to facilitate the third of our workshops of this section of the master plan, and just give a little bit of framing for all of you around what it is that you're participating in, because I know some of you have been to our prior workshops and some of you are new. So we welcome all of you. The master plan is a guiding document for Dedham to help us with decision making. And this is something that we do every 10 years. And I'll say, and I think the MAPC team will attest that Dedham actually takes it fairly seriously relative to some other towns. So we really try to make sure that we're getting a lot of community input, and which is a part of what you're doing. And then also looking to create a plan that will be able to be implementable, if that is an actual word. That's not something that will stick on, just sit on a shelf, but something that will actually be used and be an active resource for the community as we go forward into the next decade. So tonight we're excited to talk about some very important topics. Those are as Carolina said earlier, community services, facilities, and governance, as well as land use and zoning. And I know some of those, the topic areas sound kind of like dry names, but I think you're going to be excited, and the team has really found a way to bring those to life. And I will say, even as someone who's actually passionate about land use and zoning, it is one of the most, I think, important topics that we can talk about in terms of thinking about how we're going to manage the growth of Dedham in the next 10 years. And so we're excited to have you here. So with that, I'll hand it over to my co-chair, Sarah McDonald.
Thanks, Jess, and thanks to everybody attending today. I just want to take a moment to recognize the milestone that we have reached at this point, March 30th, 2021, being our third and final open house, having framed conversations, diving relatively deep in data and best practices and suggestions and ideas across a whole number of topic areas. Just want to thank all of the committee members who have really shown up, engaged, asked really good questions, made really good suggestions. You'll see the list on your screen. And just mark that this is our last open house in this phase. And from here, we kind of shift into the next phase of the master plan. The MAPC team has a whole bunch of feedback from the open houses we've hosted, from committee discussions, feedback on some of our content areas, and we'll go about actually starting to work towards implementation or strategies and recommendations to incorporate in the greater plan. So I'm excited to have everybody here. It's been an unusual process, but we're keeping it moving along. So thanks.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Jessica. Good evening, everyone. My name is Josh Fiala. I'm a principal planner at MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. We're the regional planning agency of the Boston area. The town of Dedham hired us in 2019 to facilitate this master plan process. We have a planning staff which is pretty well aligned with the master plan and the topics that are required in the plan. And so we've been seeing them in meetings before. We have many of them with us this evening as facilitators and discussion leaders on the topics at hand. And this evening, you'll see presentations from Brian Luther, a municipal services specialist, Courtney Lewis, a regional land use planner, and myself, a principal planner, as I mentioned, and the manager of this process. So we're happy to be here with you this evening. We have a few logistics to cover for you. First off, the meeting is being recorded, as you may have heard. It will be posted online at the website for the project, designingdedham2030.org. Please remain muted unless you're asking a question during the Q&A periods or participating in a breakout discussion. When it's time for the Q&A, you can use the chat function or raise your hand function to ask verbally, and we'll recognize you then. You'll also be invited to participate in several polls in this meeting throughout the presentation, and those will just pop up on your screen, and you can respond to those as they show up. This is the third of the open house series, as Sarah mentioned. It's not the last period of engagement. We'll touch on that a little bit more, different ways to stay engaged with the process. But this is the third open house that we've hosted in this portion of the master plan process. The purpose of these meetings really has been to share draft goals that are developed within each of the topic areas of the master plan. This evening, we have 3 topics that remain in this series: governance, community facilities and services, and land use and zoning. We're inviting your feedback on this continuing work and would like you to stay engaged with the Designing Dedham master plan process as it continues. If you've already attended one of the other 2 master plan open houses in this phase, you'll know that the format is pretty familiar now. So we'll be giving brief presentations on the topic areas, governance first up, and then you'll be pausing in this case after each of those presentations for a brief Q&A and clarifying questions. And then we'll do a breakout session for the first 2 topics combined in this case for governance and community facilities and services. And then we'll do the same routine for land use and zoning and wrap up the meeting. So at the very beginning of this process, the master plan committee comprised of Dedham residents, which are really representative of a broad range of perspectives in the town. They decided to put forward this set of committee values and expectations, and they've been guiding our conversations as a committee, and we put them forward in this meeting to help guide the broader conversations with the community as well. So we've really leaned into these and have tried to focus on open-mindedness, respect, addressing conflict directly, being organized, transparent, and goal-minded, and respecting history without fearing change. So just keep those in mind as we're going through our discussions this evening. A little bit about the content of the plan and how it all fits together. So we've been going systematically topic by topic in the sort of diagram that you can see. All of those will be consistent with a vision statement that looks at the town overall over the next 10 years and where you all would like to see the town growing toward and improving toward. The topic goals will be filling out that vision statement and be consistent with it and really provide across the variety of topics very concrete ways that the town wants to improve on its current circumstances. Those topic goals will be then further made specific by strategies and actions that we hope, as Jessica and Sarah highlighted, will be focused on implementation and actions that are achievable. So we're focused in these conversations and at this moment in the process on those topic goals and have been organizing information to get your reaction and feedback on the presumptive goals, working draft goals as they sit today. But then from there, they're very important to us to get those established. We'll be really diving into the more detailed strategies and actions, hopefully with a comfort level that there is some community support for the goals that are being articulated. So in addition to meetings such as this one and the series that we've had underway, we've had other ways for the community to be engaged. We've had 2 community surveys, which were hosted online as surveys throughout that anyone could participate in and any of the residents, and had a tremendous response to those, which we've been building upon that feedback and input from the community. So we've had over 1,450 responses across those 2 surveys, which is a very strong foundation for us to be building information from. All of this has been occurring over the past 15 months and will continue through the end of this year, 2021. We'll have additional opportunities for community discussions on the plan content later this summer and fall. And the plan will really begin to take shape in its entirety over the fall, and you'll have additional open house events, maybe some even in person, if you can imagine. And so we'll see how that plays out. We'll adjust to the broader circumstances as we can to make sure that we wrap this process up in a very public and engaging way. And that's where we're at with the yellow bar today in March of 2021, just a little past halfway. So all of the previous topics have been documented and recorded. So if you'd like, if you were not able to participate in a previous discussion and see a topic that interests you, you can find the recording of the session on the website. You can also find other presentation materials and topic summaries. And we invite you to, whenever you can, get to it, take a look at those materials and send any of our project leadership an email if you have a comment or suggestion about how things could be strengthened and improved. That's what we'd love to hear, and we're happy to gather all input that we can. Here's the website, which is a very important resource we refer everyone to, designingdedham2030.org. It's really packed with information, including video recordings of all previous presentations, as I mentioned, which are the open houses, but also every committee meeting is available for review as well, and other topic summaries, demographic information, and really a wealth of data about the town. So first up, we've spent enough time now talking about ourselves. Probably, if you've been along with us for many of these meetings, you've heard all of that before. So what we'd like to know now is a little bit more about you and who's out there in the audience. So we have gathered this information in each of the meetings previously, and it helps us tremendously in understanding who's being a part of this process and who is not being a part of this process, so we can help to target our outreach and engagement efforts. So let me share the poll with you now. It should pop right up on your screen. And one thing to note on the poll, there are 6 questions that are part of this poll, which should be on your screen now. So you have to scroll down in the little window that popped up, and you should be able to answer each of the different 6 questions with clicking the dot for your selection. So there's, what neighborhood do you live in? And you should scroll down. What is your age? What gender do you identify with? What race or ethnicity do you identify with? How did you learn about this meeting? And have you participated in a previous master plan?
Josh, do you see, it looks like we're sharing the results and people don't actually have access to the poll.
Oh. Let me relaunch.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, sorry about that. Now, hopefully you should be able to do what I've just outlined. Very good. With that pro tip on how to use polls, it looks like everything's coming in now. And so we've got 31 out of the 67 participants and rising. And we'll let it just go a little bit longer. So up to 80% of you voting. And I'll share the results in a minute, but I'll just start to give you a preview of them as we get the last votes in. So it looks like the neighborhoods, there's representation from each of the neighborhoods, with Oakdale being the lead. Looks like we've stopped getting more results. So I'll end the poll now. You can look at the results with me as I go through them. So Oakdale is the leading neighborhood, but it's good to see a good distribution with all neighborhoods represented. So it's good to get the viewpoints of all corners of the town. Age, 23% or 23 respondents, 38% in the 50 to 64 year category. It's the leading category of age, but then also a decent representation in 35 to 49 years of age and 65 plus. Gender, a little bit more, 61% female than male, with 39%. Race and ethnicity, we have a predominantly white meeting, 89%, and then some representation of Latinx and Black or African American demographics, and Asian as well, and 2 or more races with 5%. And then how did you learn about this meeting? Facebook and the email newsletter look to be the most popular ways. And the majority of you have participated in previous meetings, 74%, but it's still good to see 16 new participants, so 26% of the meeting tonight. So we continue to grow the audience who's been made aware of this plan process, and hopefully you'll stay engaged with us. And just to note, one of the focus, I won't dwell too long on it, but to highlight in terms of the demographics, we have noted in the previous meetings that we are, in terms of race and ethnicity, underrepresented compared to the demographics of the community. So we are in our outreach working group and other efforts really over the spring trying to have a targeted and focused effort to reach particularly the Black and Latinx populations. So I'll stop sharing that poll, and we will hand it off now to Brian Luther, who will walk us through governance.
Thanks, Josh. I just want to do a mic check. Everyone can hear me okay? All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us here tonight. Like Josh said, my name is Brian Luther. I'm MAPC's Municipal Services Specialist. And tonight I'll be talking about the governance topic area. Just want to hit that next slide. Yeah, so the governance topic area has a few key themes. And over the next 10 years, we're really looking for Dedham to make some strides in some key areas. First, we'd like to enhance municipal services and resident experiences. When we say resident experiences, we mean the passive, less involved resident, as well as the more active and engaged residents like you folks here tonight. Second, we want to talk about improving participation and representation. Dedham has many opportunities to participate, and what we've learned in the process is that there's a perception that typically is the same residents and families involved in this process, and we'd like to make improvements on that. And third, effectively preparing for future challenges. There are many steps that Dedham can take now that will better position the town for upcoming challenges, and our draft goals are intended to accomplish this. Next slide. In no particular order, I'm going to introduce the working draft goals. First, we'd like to improve municipal communication with residents by establishing an approach that centers residents and services and communications. Second, we'd like to support investment in tech-friendly government practices. Third, Dedham needs to advance their efforts in workforce planning and talent management, not something that we're used to hearing in the public sector. And fourth, like to establish some diversity goals and representation goals and evaluate efforts to meet those goals on an annual basis. And then lastly, we need to address Dedham's boards and commissions by defining annual goals and expectations. Next slide. All right, so draft goal 1. Our first draft goal is about putting residents first. Dedham needs to change its approach and focus how residents are served in their communications. And so like I'll take for our first example, like town documents need to be more resident friendly. I mean, how many residents can really look at the town budget and understand the outcomes of those line items? With a different resident focused approach, Dedham residents will be more informed to engage in local decision making. If you want to hit the next slide, please. So if you can see this is a snip from Dedham's most recent budget on the website. And as you can see, there's many important budget line items on the sheet. And at other points in their presentation, you can find that information about full-time employees, about revenues, and other important statistics. But if you compare this to this next slide, so this is Andover's budget, and if you can see this, you'll notice a lot of key differences. So this is their highway department's budget, and just in this one page, you can see a description of the department, the reasons responsible for major budget shifts, the department's objectives, their expenses, and number of full-time employees. And it's just a more comprehensive way of making sure the resident can understand the budget, and I think it's a great improvement. I believe residents would be more informed if they could see their department budgets broken down like this. And Andover is one of 31 municipalities in Massachusetts that receive a national distinction for their budget presentation from the Government Finance Officers Association. And this is just one example of how they can Dedham can take a more resident-focused approach and improve all documents and communications with residents. Okay, and yeah, next slide. Jump the gun on a little, but that's okay. So second, Dedham needs to support investment in tech-friendly government practices. As we've seen in the last year, technology has drastically altered the way we live our lives. But for many reasons, local government has been late to adopt these modern tools and improve services. We're more capable than ever to work and conduct business from home. And many government services, including public meetings in other towns, permitting, have transitioned online. And in order to expand offerings, Dedham would need to first invest in the IT infrastructure and potentially a staff to support that IT expansion, and build upon that foundation to provide residents services in a more convenient way. Next slide. Okay, when what has been dubbed as the silver tsunami is coming for all local governments, including Dedham. The bulk of current municipal workforce is getting closer and closer to retirement, and it'll be much more challenging to fill those positions as this trend continues. Dedham will only be as successful as its ability to meet this challenge and ensure that it invests in its human capital, its ability to hire and retain an increasingly competitive job market. It's projected to be very competitive in filling open positions, and the town will need to look at all angles to ensure that Dedham is an attractive place to work and compete for scarce talent. This includes, modernizing the hiring process, revisiting workplace policies, and providing competitive monetary and non-monetary benefits, and mentorship programs and succession planning. So this challenge, it can be, rather daunting looking at it over the next 10 years, but it also provides a great opportunity to reinvent Dedham's workforce in a way that, in the way in which it conducts business. Next slide. Okay, among the professional work staff and the town representatives on boards and commissions, it's important to make sure that those who are in the decision-making process are reflective of Dedham population. Each person who helps make decisions for Dedham has their own sets of experiences and ideas, and it's important to achieve a balance that reflects Dedham. On a state and national level, many of those who occupy government positions and participate in local decision-making tend to be older and whiter than the population. However, without tracking this information locally, we really don't have any way of quantifying how Dedham performs and if steps need to be made to help improve this representation. So this draft goal looks into first quantifying town boards and commissions, municipal work staff and hiring. Second, identifying areas of improvement that can be made, setting deliberate goals and ensuring that those areas have the proper resources to succeed. And third, evaluating performance annually, increasing transparency, and I really do think that Dedham needs to work proactively in order to ensure that the town population is reflected in its local decision making. Next slide, please. One of Dedham's biggest assets is its boards and commissions. With these decision-making bodies, when they are effective, Dedham has many residents involved addressing a whole range of community issues. However, through this master plan process, we've heard from many residents that feel that there's room for improvement, and we believe there are some structural and procedural changes to help organize and position these boards and commissions for success. By creating a formal hierarchy and establishing relationships with other boards, we can limit redundancy and duplication of efforts, as well as eliminate miscommunications and ensure that residents know where their issues should be heard. And by creating an annual review process for each board and commission, we can define expectations, track accomplishments, improve effectiveness, and it's much easier to communicate those accomplishments to Dedham residents. And so I have the next slide for me, please. And you can see by the sheer number of boards and commissions that Dedham has and the infrastructure it's built to address many different challenges, it's going to take a large effort to organize and oversee them in an effective and efficient structure. But I think it's an important step to ensuring that these groups are able to communicate with each other and help Dedham succeed. Next slide. So in summary, I'm just going to walk through the working draft goals again. So no particular order, we'd like to improve municipal communication with residents, establishing an approach to center residents' communication to services and communications. We'd like to support investments in tech-friendly government practices. Want to advance the efforts in workforce planning and talent management. We'd like to establish diversity and representation goals and evaluate efforts annually to meet those goals, and address Dedham's board and commissions by defining annual goals and expectations. And that's next slide.
Thank you, Brian. That's excellent. So we've added this in. We didn't have it in previous meetings, but we thought it would be helpful. So we are asking people to keep these questions to clarifying questions, and we'll have time to do a broader discussion in the breakout session for this topic. But we did get, Brian, some clarifying questions already in the chat.
Yeah.
One was from Fred. He asked, what does tech tools mean? Could you expand a little bit on tech tools?
Yeah. So I mean, we've seen from many local governments, especially local governments in the area. So tech tools can just be the way in which you interact with your local government doing normal business. So whether that be most governments, you can pay your tax bill online, or some other towns you can apply for a building permit, and even schedule an inspection online. There's just technologies, especially in the municipal sector, has gone pretty far in the last 10 to 15 years, and there are different tech tools that can help communicate with residents, but also help conduct business. I mean, even right now, having this meeting on Zoom would be considered a tech tool. And I think being more proactive in embracing those tools is a great way in order to help some residents, most residents, but it's a great option for a lot of municipal governments to provide that service that way.
Great. Thanks, Brian. And if others have questions, they can use the raise your hand function or put them in the chat too. And we had another
oh, sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, I do see one from Andrew about the various color codes to the boards. Those differentiate between appointed, elected, and volunteer.
Great. We'll just pause for a moment and see if leave some awkward silence so anyone else who would maybe want to ask a question clarifying can. It's like Diane Barry Preston has raised her hand. If one of us co-hosts could get to her, I will ask to unmute. There you go. You should be able to unmute, Diane.
Thank you. I'm wondering if you could give me an example about how you might consolidate or streamline the boards, just so I can think about it a little bit better. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it seems from a lot of the feedback that we've heard and from some of those stories that we've heard, that the boards and commissions kind of operate separately of each other. And oftentimes we don't necessarily know, like, when a resident has an issue, to where to go to have that addressed. And it's creating a formal hierarchy where, boards have relationships with each other and will, sometimes present to a board and update them on certain services. Just creating a formal hierarchy that's intuitive. And also establishing annual goals that can be evaluated. So say we have, if you want to go back to that slide that has the different boards, we've grouped them in a way that we feel is somewhat intuitive. But so in terms of, you look at like the town management section, you have the select board, and if you had a formal hierarchy where each one of the boards underneath it funnel and present to the select board and get evaluated on those goals, that might be a better way in which to to organize and structure, but then also make sure that each board is being overseen by one, and there's information that can be disseminated from a central location and steered, and the residents can be steered in the right direction for certain issues, but also in a way in which to just keep track of what is happening at all levels in each board. I hope that answered your question.
Any other clarifying questions before we move on to community facilities and services? All right. We will get plenty of time to discuss these in more detail in the small group sessions, but thought it would be helpful, just as you did now, to clarify what some of those terms meant. So we will advance now because we're clustering these two topics together. They are very closely related. We'll have Courtney Lewis now present and walk us through community facilities and services.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Courtney Lewis. I'm a regional planner in the land use department at MAPC. And I will be leading the community facilities and services element. And I think it's a really positive thing that Brian and I are presenting together this evening, because these two topic areas are very closely tied. The community facilities and services element of Designing Dedham will seek to identify and prioritize infrastructure and capital investments in a way that is equitable, efficient, and sustainable, and that also supports the implementation of goals and objectives in other elements in this master plan. Community facilities and services are a major component of Dedham's physical, social, and economic fabric. They help to create a vibrant public realm, and they're also important to the quality of life for residents. As the town continues to change and grow over time, it's important that the town have adequate and well-designed facilities and is able to provide residents and businesses with dependable and high-quality services. Public services. So this element has two major components. A public facility is any town or property that has been developed for a particular public purpose. The term also includes public infrastructure, including utilities and other non-building facilities such as parks, playgrounds, and cemeteries. Community or public services include things like public safety, public education, libraries, water and sewer, solid waste and recycling, as well as partnerships with organizations and contracted services such as public health, housing assistance, recreation, and arts and culture. These two components usually, but not always, intersect or overlap. And this happens when a public facility serves as a base of operation for a town department. For example, town hall houses several departments, and collectively, all of these elements working in tandem help to create the places and spaces that you love and enjoy. It's shown in this diagram. Next slide. So we will be providing you with topic summaries on community facilities and services, and that will provide you somewhat of a snapshot of some existing conditions, information on recent updates and improvements to town facilities, and summarize results from the topic area survey. And you may note that as I go through this presentation and discuss the draft goals, that you'll see a few direct quotes taken from the survey that directly relate to that particular goal. So now we're going to review some of the goals. There are 5, and then we'll shift to a breakout session to discuss them more in depth and get your thoughts and feedback on these draft goals. So goal 1, define benchmarks and priorities to guide capital investments and asset management. Benchmarks and priorities that can be established in advance and agreed upon would be useful to helping to guide capital investments and asset management. Next slide. So this can be done by developing, as Brian kind of mentioned, developing accessible, educational, and actionable information, and then also making sure that the information is distributed in through effective channels, like on the web, in print, and across different forms of media. And we've already started to do some of this even within this master planning process. For example, the sign campaign, and using the text responses to some of the questions from that particular campaign, as well as what we're currently doing by hosting this virtual open house. Overall, improving communication between residents and town government, and revamping the way the town engages with the community is going to be so crucial to ensuring that This is a fair and transparent and equitable process. It'll be critical to develop these it'll be critical to develop these benchmarks, and so that the public has a clear understanding of the process, and some things that should be easily answered and thought about throughout developing this process is how does a particular project find its way into the capital improvement plan? How does it relate to the town's broader vision for its future? And what role does the community play in thinking through some of these strategic priorities and setting decisions? Next slide. So goal 2, develop asset management policies to guide maintenance, upgrades, and disposition. So obsolete or unused properties can present opportunities and as well as maintenance challenges. Next slide. And some of those opportunities include um, the disposition of surplus municipal properties, and adaptive reuse of existing facilities, and also creating a process where you evaluate existing facility constraints, as well as look at uh, that cost comparisons that look at repairing or renovating as opposed to building completely new structures. So some survey responses noted that sometimes it may be appropriate to renovate or reuse existing public facilities for new uses rather than build. And then other times it may be more cost effective just to build newer, more sustainable facilities. So this process would allow for the town as well as the public to take all of those things into consideration and make more informed decisions. Next slide. So goal 3, enhance public facilities to advance sustainability, innovation, livability, and equity. Capital improvements should incorporate design standards that support the environment, reduce energy use, mitigate climate change impacts, and strengthen resiliency. Capital improvements should also prioritize uh, should prioritize improving livability and equity for residents. So um, any facility improvements and investments should be consistent with the town's existing sustainability and resilience goals and actions, which are identified both in the town's climate action plan and the open space and recreation plan. The town should also ensure that quality of life infrastructure like parks, open space, safe sidewalks, diverse housing options, and transit access are provided to residents in an equitable manner. Next slide. Goal 4, proactively assess funding needs and dedicate staff to pursue external resources. So the town should identify and seek alternative funding strategies for capital improvements. Uh, one funding strategy is grants and low interest loans. Uh, the thing with grants are that they are often highly competitive, and they also require time and effort to pursue. Next slide. And in order to qualify for these grants or pursue these grants, it requires staff time and funding. So this could mean designating funds to create a position for like a grants writer, for example, or simply providing time and funding for existing staff to pursue funding opportunities. The town should also continue to contribute to the Robin Reyes Stabilization Fund to help with funding capital improvements, but it also should consider other funding sources like the Community Preservation Act. Next slide. And the last and final goal, explore the expansion of town services to advance equity. So the town should review the services provided relative to services needed and adapt to the evolving needs of the community. It should also establish procedures for this type of assessment. Next slide. So social services for families in need appear to be lacking or slightly disjointed. And so new town services or facilities such as programming geared towards youth and teens, or the development of a multi-generational community center could start to help address some of those service needs. I'm not a social work professional, but I think it's also very important that I think it's important to provide services that engage children, youth, and their families, and that start to shift the focus away from the traditional problem-based approach to care services, and instead focuses on individual and family strengths, as well as that really start to help families and individuals achieve positive goals that improve their overall well-being. And so again, these are the 5 draft goals. Define benchmarks and priorities to guide capital investment and assessment and asset management policies. Develop asset management policies to guide maintenance, upgrade, and disposition processes. Enhance public facilities to advance sustainability, innovation, livability, and equity. Proactively assess funding needs and dedicate staff to pursue external resources. And finally, explore the expansion of town services to advance equity.
Great, thank you very much, Courtney. So similarly as we did with Brian, if anyone has any clarifying questions about the information Courtney just presented, we'll pause here and talk about that just before we go to the breakouts. I did not see any pop up in the chat as Courtney was presenting this time. All right, very clear presentation, Courtney, well done. So let's now go to the breakout sessions, and these will be about 25 minutes long. What we're asking, just to give you a bit of frame of reference for the breakout sessions, is we're basically asking you to react to the information that was just presented to you, outlining the working draft goals for these 2 topic areas, We'd like to hear from you what stood out. Are there other major goals that should be included in this topic that you did not hear about? What is the most important? And do you have any other questions you'd like to discuss with our team? And so we'll be also recording the breakout sessions so we get the benefit of the discussion across the team, and then also be taking notes and integrating your feedback into strengthening these draft goals. So with that, I'll invite Carolina to send us into our groups and we'll have a discussion.
Thanks, Josh. And before we do that, I'll just put in here our group agreements for our breakout sessions for everybody to have. And as a reminder, in the chat, all of the goals that we outlined are here. So you can scroll up to the earlier ones as well. And then we're going to see you in a little while. And feel free, if you have any other questions, to let me know. We'll see you soon. Hi, Bernadette, welcome. We are in breakout rooms, so I am going to go ahead and put you in one of the breakout rooms with everyone. So hang tight. We have about 15 more. Hi, Howard. Thank you so much for joining. We are currently in a breakout room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and assign you to one of the groups so that you're able to join the conversation. We have about 10 more minutes and then we're going to do the next presentation. So let me know if you have any other questions. Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for joining. We are currently in some breakout rooms, so we're gonna have about 10 more minutes left. Sorry, about 10 more minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and put you in a breakout room, and we'll see you in the main room a little bit later, just to have an additional conversation on the next topic. So I'm gonna go ahead and assign you now, but let me know if you have any questions, okay, Mike? And I see you're still connecting to audio. Hi, Mary. Hi, John. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We are currently in a breakout room. I'm going to go ahead and assign you to a breakout room. We have about 10 more minutes and we're talking about the governance goal. And then afterwards, we're going to come back, do a raffle, and we're going to do the next one. Does that sound okay? Okay. Thanks so much, Mary. Good to see you. All right, off you go. Hi, Patricia. Thank you so much for attending. We are currently in a breakout room, so we have about 10 more minutes. We're talking about the governance section of the master plan. And so I'm going to go ahead and put you in a breakout room, and then we're going to be back here to do a raffle and talk about the next topic area. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, but let me know if you have any questions right now before I do that. You can put it in the chat if you do. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and send you off, and we'll see you soon. Hi, Giovanna. Thank you so much for joining us. Looks like you're connecting to audio. I'm going to go ahead and shoot you over to a breakout room. We have about 10 more minutes or 6 more minutes left, and then we're going to head back over here to do a raffle and talk about the next topic area. We are currently discussing governance. I'm going to send you over to Alex's group, okay? So hang on tight, and we'll see you soon. Thanks. Hello, how'd it go? Oh, you were, I think you can't talk. There you go.
Hi. Okay.
Great. Welcome back, Martha, Alex, Michelle. Hi, Howard. Welcome back. Thanks for joining. We're just going to wait until everybody else is able to join back up. Hope everyone had some good discussions. I'm hoping to hear some highlights from some folks as we're getting back. So hopefully you had ample time to discuss and answer questions, all those things. So as folks are joining back with us, we're going to hear from Brian and Courtney about any closing observations from your breakout rooms, I believe.
Yeah, let's start with Brian. And Brian, as you, if you could just give us a little bit of a reflection on what you heard in your room, and we'll open a poll at the same time. Let me just describe that before you start talking. But this is an exit poll of sorts. So just overall, the materials that were presented and discussed by Brian this evening in governance, do you think the goals are about right as a set for the master plan? And the poll will ask you to judge that with a few variations and gradations. So Brian, why don't you reflect a little bit while that poll pops up?
Yeah, absolutely. So our group, we talked a little bit about, communication between the town and its residents, and also a little bit about the tech environment that we're in now, and ensuring that once we roll back some of these restrictions from the pandemic, that we keep the communication ways, like so being able to attend a public meeting, via the comfort of your own home, keeping that intact while also offering the traditional ways in which public meetings were happening in the past. And we talked a little bit about transportation and the walkability and bikeability of the towns and where in which to voice those concerns. And I think it was a pretty productive conversation. I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you very much, Brian. And then I'll invite Courtney to give us a similar summary of what he heard in his group conversation. While the poll, by the way, has both topics. So you'll see you can scroll down again and answer the same question about community facilities and services.
Sure. So we talked a little bit about everything. And one of the things that was part of our initial discussion was kind of further stages within the master planning process. Some people voiced concerns about not just defining these goals, but also specifying what groups and organizations and departments will be responsible and be held accountable for helping to execute the actions and objectives that fall under these goals, and also specifying timeframes for which these actions should be carried out. So that was like one thing. And what I told them was that we're working our way towards that in the master planning process. We also talked a bit about schools and the need for updated school facilities. We talked a little bit about parks and recreation, and not just the physical state of current facilities, but also needs in terms of staffing to help maintain and upkeep, help with upkeep of these facilities.
Thank you very much, Courtney. So it looks like I'm going to press the button on the ending poll. So I invite you, if you haven't, we've got 73% of you who have submitted a response to the poll. So I'll close that in just a moment. All right, that is closed now, and I'll just share that back with you. So it looks like overall people are feeling that the set of governance goals is pretty close. So either very close, 28%, or close, 40%. A few of you were neutral on it. Not too many of you, 2% said that they were not close, and no one said that they were way off. So that's good. And then similarly, for the community facilities and services goals, 26% thought they were very close, 45% thought they were close. Then a smaller number thought neutral about them. 9% thought not close. And again, no one thought they were way off. So we have a little bit of work to do. We will take the feedback we heard and collected from you all in the breakout discussions and refine these and make sure, with the hope that we'll get more of you feeling that the goals are close or very close. And then we'll begin working on detailing those out as we've described.
Hey, Josh, are we super pressed for time, or can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Sure. So for anyone, not to call anyone out, but for anyone who thought that the goals were not close, it would be great, I think, if we could share as a group, possibly, your thoughts about why one or more of the goals were not close, so that we know what we need to circle back and revisit.
And I might amend that request, Courtney, and suggest that it would actually be useful for the flow of the meeting if people wouldn't mind, if they do want to offer that additional input, to direct message Courtney. You can do that in the chat. You can actually direct message Courtney, or you could direct message Brian if you want to give feedback like that to either of them. And then that would be sending the input directly to the people who need to hear it. So that rather than spend the time verbally, Courtney, if you wouldn't mind, I will make that suggestion. And then we'll keep moving along. But please, that is important feedback, as Courtney suggests. Alternatively, if you're watching this as a recording, or you want to do so with a little more thought in your input, you can go to the website, and my email address is prominently positioned on that website, and we'd be happy for you to send your input along, and I will get it to the right staff members. So thank you for that. Before we move into the next topic, let's just take a quick mental break, and we will pass it over to Michelle for a brief raffle break. You can also have a quick stretch. Let me stop sharing my screen so Michelle can share hers.
Thank you so much, Josh. So I do want to, again, thank you all so much for your time tonight. Please take a moment, just stretch your arms out, stretch your legs out, get that blood flowing a little bit. So I will ask Josh if you can actually allow me, oh no, it looks like I am able to. Yep, as I see people on the screen as I get this shared. So we are going to be having a raffle tonight. Again, that will be for the Eggs and Tie Cafe, as well as M&M cleaners. So we will spin this wheel, do a little drum roll, get everyone excited for these raffle prizes. Again, thank you all so much. Keep stretching those legs as we see who's about to win. Sarah Smeagol, thank you so much for coming here tonight. I do want to congratulate you. So that will be for Eggs and Tie Cafe. So I will send you a message to get your information to send you over that gift card. Next, we'll have M&M cleaners. Again, a little drum roll, get everyone excited. So we're about to see who the winner will be for M&M cleaners. Stuart Wild, I will send you a message as well. Again, we'll just get your information to see the best way to send you that gift card. So thank you all so much. I will send it back to Josh Fiala now.
Thank you, Michelle. That's I always like that. That's nice. So that spinning wheel, by the way, has all the participants who have registered for these meetings inserted there, that little fantastic technological spinner. So thank you for the raffle break. And now let's talk about land use and zoning. So there's not really a great segue from a raffle to land use and zoning, so we'll just dive right in. All right, so I want to start with just highlighting some of the land use and settlement patterns in Dedham, which are influenced by infrastructure and natural assets, and they're really defined by a few characteristics. So strong transit access, the historic squares and neighborhood centers that anchor walkable places and define the town's character. A central commercial corridor in Providence Highway that helps to define convenient vehicular access for the town and connects to the Route 128 corridor. The extensive natural resources, including rivers and water bodies that were key to Dedham's legacy as an industrious mill town. And the present day zoning regulations that need some help to guide all of these land use influences productively toward the town's vision. So these are some of the influences which have been present in Dedham's evolution and settlement patterns from its very origins and continue to influence the town's land use today. So as we've done in the other topics, we have assembled working draft goals for land use and zoning. See those on the screen now. And really, I'll go through each of them in detail, so I won't dwell too much on this summary slide, and we'll revisit it a little bit later. But you get a feel for what the goals are about. Let's just dive in and get into the details. So the first goal is to align the town regulations with the vision and the goals of this plan and the town's future more broadly. This would include a comprehensive review of the town zoning bylaws to identify areas that are inconsistent with the vision and the goals that are being articulated in this process and that have been articulated in recent other planning processes, such as the Open Space and Recreation Plan and the Climate Action Plan. For each identified issue, several solutions might be available. Then the town will have to decide on the most appropriate remedy and advance the zoning changes to town meeting. For example, one item we've heard about relative to zoning and land use is the process of houses being torn down only to build back a new home that is much larger in neighborhoods around the town. One solution could be to introduce another zoning characteristic to regulate density, a density that would be appropriate to each neighborhood, and that might help to modify that dynamic which is occurring. All the land in Dedham, of course, is regulated under one of 12 established zones. There are 4 types of residential zones and 8 types of non-residential zones. Another simple example of the need to update the zoning bylaw is found in the administrative and professional AP zone. It no longer applies to any portion of the town, but remains in the bylaw. So there's some simple bylaw updates which are needed just to bring it into sort of its present use. And then there are other more detailed review which needs to occur, which we will perform as a part of this process, but have not yet, because we want to see where the vision and the goals start to take shape so that we can look at the zoning bylaw through that lens and make some suggestions about where those inconsistencies may lie. The second goal is to direct and manage growth more proactively in and to the existing economic activity centers. Much of Dedham is in an area that was previously developed, but in many cases, the previously developed areas could be improved and optimized. As the town has been doing, individual district plans will continue to help guide how investment should be targeted and guided. So what you see on the screen is a land use map of the town with the variations in land use following the color coding. So for example, the various tones of yellow indicate variations in residential uses around the town, whereas the reds and pinks are commercial and industrial uses. So the detailed planning that we're talking about in this goal has occurred in some cases. For example, the extensive planning studies which have occurred in and around Dedham Square or East Dedham Square. The commercial and light industrial areas of the town are small compared to the residential areas and the natural resource areas, but much of the attention we've seen from the feedback in this process is to focus the investment and new growth on the commercial and light industrial areas. So strengthening those areas and improving them as centers of activity, hearts of commerce, and really the focus of many of the daily routines of town residents. The third goal is to really reinforce that preservation and conservation have been important to the town and will continue to be important. This will remain a focus for land use and zoning going forward, leaning on the excellent townwide resources and reinforcing the really companion documents which have been recently completed, the Open Space and Recreation Plan and the Climate Action Plan. And while we're not looking to repeat the very specific and focused actions and goals which were articulated in those plans, we do want to provide a consistency and coordination between those documents and the master plan, and make sure that those items which are maybe a little bit broader in nature or relate to the land use and zoning are incorporated into this plan. So another aspect of this, at least from my perspective, and just to float it out there for reaction tonight, is that these assets should not necessarily be only preserved or conserved and set aside, but should be preserved as integral town features that both reflect the history and legacy of the town, but also meaningfully contribute to the future of the town. So we're not looking to make the town into a museum per se, but we're really looking to leverage the historic and natural resources in such a way that they are a part of people's daily lives and they do fulfill functions that are needed for the town. I think of the Ames building as an excellent example of this, where you have an adaptive reuse of a historic structure that is now a center point of town services. And from the perspective of the natural resources, it's not just a matter of conserving these resources, but putting them to work also in the way that is necessary to increase townwide resilience, dealing with stormwater, increased frequency of major storm events, the heat island effect, and other potential impacts of climate change as we look forward, and relating these natural resources directly back to the actions outlined in the Climate Action Plan. So the fourth goal, leveraging investments to match the town needs and priorities. For better or worse, many of the changes that may be desired in the town are dependent on private investment, typically through development processes on private land. The town must clearly define, articulate, and communicate its needs and priorities to property owners and developers so that those needed investments contribute to the greater good. These might include positively impacting priorities already expressed through this process, including improving walkability, providing better access to natural resources, expanding the network of usable outdoor spaces, or other specific needs. And I would put forward that it's much easier to integrate these needs, townwide needs, into these private investments when they are clearly articulated through both documents such as the master plan, but also moving closer in the form of design guidelines or even design standards in terms of the regulatory environment of the zoning bylaw. So really leveraging investments which will occur over time in the town anyway, but making sure that each of those investments are really optimized from the town's perspective, since not everything can be achieved through public investment alone, but making sure that those private investments are making the necessary improvements. So we've heard this a lot through many of the survey responses and quotes that we've gathered from feedback along the way so far in this process. So for example, making use of underutilized lands in low impact ways, that efficiency is the key. Any updated land uses would be very beneficial. Updates to parks or the rail trail or more walking trails, very little open space in general, no parks downtown. So these are the types of individual needs that could be identified and then integrated as part of development approval processes. And you could see them show up in some of those plans, but they will not show up on those private developments unless they're clearly articulated and communicated. And then the fifth goal is to really leverage a strength of the settlement patterns of the town. And that's to take the compact neighborhoods which already exist and the local business districts which are at their hearts, and to really strengthen them and enhance the walkability of the mixed use areas, but also the neighborhoods more generally. So walkable and compact neighborhoods that are punctuated by local business districts are really an admirable feature of the town's land use patterns. And this goal would be to strengthen those and to increase safe non-vehicular circulation throughout the town. So here's a more generalized land use map, which just breaks down into those major buckets of land use. And now might have been so subtle as to not be even noticed, but you can see the transit lines highlighted now with some of the dotted walking catchments on those purple lines. And the red circles that have just shown up are half-mile walking distances, so about a 10-minute walk as a radius from those center points. And those center points also include the local business districts at the center of many of the neighborhoods. So for example, Dedham Square and East Dedham Square, but then beyond those very well-known squares to the local business districts that are occurring on Sprague Street or Cedar Street or Bridge Street, and then around the rail stations at Endicott and Dedham Corporate Center. So if you lay out all these circles, which really represent the walkability around these assets, you're covering just about half of the town. And so that's I think, a tremendous asset that needs to be leveraged and improved and built upon. That many other towns in our region do not have this type of coverage of walkable compact neighborhoods or transit-oriented centers. And then lastly, to really highlight that first asset that I mentioned, which was the transit orientation, and to focus on it as a goal, looking forward to the future of the town and land use patterns. And I know that this has been work of the past, but needs to continue into the future as well. And that's focusing growth near transit and multimodal access. Any area that can reduce dependence on the car will continue to add value in the future. And this land use goal is really about creating and increasing the amount of residents that feel they can get around without a car as a viable option. So this requires some work to improve the areas around transit to expand safe access, but will be an important strategy to manage growth and future traffic impacts. So population growth is projected to continue. The population is getting closer to its peak, which occurred in the 1970s in the town of Dedham. It shrunk a little bit from that point, but then has been steadily growing over the past couple decades, and that's projected to continue. We'll have some new data, another data point coming soon as the 2020 census data makes its way along to us, which will happen, we think, within this process. So growth is happening and will continue to happen, and where that growth is positioned in the town will have a dramatic impact in terms of all the impacts, so traffic and otherwise. Thinking about the assets of transit and how they can be leveraged and strengthened are important. In addition to the population growing, the household size is also shrinking and projected to shrink. So you need more housing units to house the same amount of population in general. And so it all points to the need for an continued increase. There has been housing production, of course, but a continued increase looking forward over the next 10 years and beyond for housing production of varying kinds. In the transit-oriented locations and compact neighborhood centers and Dedham Square and East Dedham Square are all excellent opportunities to positively direct these types of investments. And again, here's the generalized land use map with those transit centers highlighted. And you can see access to Corporate Center, Endicott, the area around Reedville. And then I've also highlighted the area by the Dedham Mall because of its bus access and the study which is also occurring around roadway access improvements on Providence Highway and how that area and its land uses may be ripe for transformation. So here are those 6 goals for land use and zoning outlined again. And we're excited to dig into the more detailed strategies and actions which would help fill these more general goals out. But we think that these are a very interesting start and point of direction for the town. So first, we'll just pause here as we did previously and ask if there are any clarifying questions about this portion of the presentation, and we'll see if we can answer those. You can use the raise your hand function or put a comment in the chat. I'm not seeing any. I'm not sure if any of my colleagues do. If they do, then they could help me with that. All right, so let's not seeing any then. We'll do a similar small group discussion where you can let us know what resonated, what may have been missing, and what could be strengthened, and what's the most important in this topic area. So with that, Carolina, I'll invite you to send us off on our way.
Thanks. It looks like Jim just actually put a question in the chat. The question is, would expansion of historic districts fall under this heading? Thanks, Jim, for your question.
Yeah. So if that's something that is desired in the town, then I think that certainly would fall under this category, and it would also could potentially find a home as a strategy under goal number 3, I believe it was, which talks about the preserving and conserving historic and natural resources. So that would be good for us to hear more about in one of the breakout groups, Jim, from the perspective on what that need might be.
Awesome. And just as a reminder to everybody, there was a question about the PowerPoint. Yes, we will put it up on the project website, including the PowerPoint and the recording for tonight. So if you need to go back and look at things, you could do that as well. I don't see any other questions unless people want to raise their hand and just make a comment or a question. Okay. So I will send everybody out again into your breakouts. I'm just resending. We did get some new folks who joined us, so thank you for those who joined for this part of the conversation tonight. I'm just going to go ahead and put our group agreements in the chat, and our facilitators can review those. And then just as a reminder, we won't actually have that 1 minute reminder for everybody to come back into the main room. It'll just get swiped back right in. So just be aware that we'll send out a reminder for the 1 minute, but then after we close the rooms, everyone will come back together. So I'm going to go ahead and open the rooms. We'll see you in a little bit.
Thanks, Carolina.
Hi, Margaret. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and we are currently in the breakout rooms and we're talking about the land use and zoning section of the master plan. So I'm going to go ahead and put you in with Michelle's group so you can join the conversation. Okay. And we'll see you in a little bit. You have some time to chat with folks. Hi, Sunshine. Thank you so much for joining us. We have about 5 more minutes in our breakout rooms, and then we're going to come back and talk more about what people talked about and what they heard in the breakout conversation around land use. So I'm going to go ahead and put you in a breakout room, and we'll see you in a little bit, okay? Thanks so much. Right, all. Thank you so much. So we are all coming back. And we'll give folks just a minute to come back. Welcome those of you who are able to rejoin us. I see some familiar faces.
Great, thank you, everyone. So it was a very good discussion. So here were the draft working goals, and I'll give you a little bit of an insight into what I heard in my small group discussion while I bring up the poll for our last topic here, which is a similar exit poll, which is basically, how do you feel about the set of land use and zoning goals? Are they about right for the master plan? So you should see that on your screen now. Oops, nope, sorry. All right, you should see that on your screen now. And the insights from my group, I think, were fascinating. So some pondering as to whether the focus on transit orientation is appropriate anymore, and that if with the autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles and the like, if the dispersal of transportation will be different over the next 10 years, and that the relevance of fixed rail will become less important. And that highlighted the maybe de-emphasis of transit-oriented development, but it also highlighted the need to emphasize and remain relevant the walkability and compact neighborhoods with a mixed-use center. So I thought those were very interesting insights. And then discussion about the nature of development processes and what can or can't be required in terms of the sort of proportional impacts that might occur and how those could be leveraged to the benefit of the town. And just the notion that that relationship and the zoning bylaws really are in need of an upgrade and an update to make sure that the development that is occurring is the most appropriate and happening in the most appropriate places. And the recent development project of the Needham Bank was highlighted quite a bit in terms of its drive-through location and how that might not be the best or most appropriate use where it is. So those are just some of the insights. I have a lot more notes to go through, but that's some of the highlights from our conversation. And I will be interested to look at the notes and insights from the other conversations as well. So it looks like in terms of the results, let me share those back with you. 24% thought that this was very close as a set of ideas. 49% thought it was close. 20% were neutral on it. And then 6% thought it was not close. So it looks like we're pretty near in terms of land use and zoning. But I think that those discussions around what the next 10 years might hold in terms of what's most relevant for infrastructure and land use patterns are fascinating ones that we will think some more about. The jury is out on those things. And probably if we were thinking about this as a 20 or 30 year master plan, the thinking might even be a little different still. So with that, let me stop sharing here. And we have just wanted to wrap up the meeting with another raffle break, and then we have very brief concluding next steps to help you understand how this process will continue. So let me stop sharing and we'll pass it over to Michelle again.
Thank you so much, Josh. So thank you all so much again for your time tonight. So we'll be sharing this screen again, if you go give me one moment. So our next raffle will be for East Dedham Pizzeria. So again, another drum roll just to end the night. See who our winner will be. I will send you a message just to see what the best way to send you this gift card will be. So congratulations. And again, thank you all so much for your time tonight. And I will go ahead and pass it right back to Josh.
Thank you, Michelle. That was fantastic. And so let's just do a brief wrap up on the next steps of our process here. So all of the materials from each of these open houses will be posted on the website, including each of the presentations and all of the recordings. So please do refer those to you to take a look at them, refer them to your neighbors if you have people that you think might be interested in participating that maybe didn't get a chance to this evening. In addition, we'd also like to refer you to each of the committee meetings which went through these topics in detail. All of those presentations are also available and did include additional information and data on each of the topics. So you can grab those presentations as well if you really want to do a deep dive, and the recordings of those meetings are also available. And all of that again is at designingdedham2030.org. So one last thing, we have maybe two last things, and one I'll let Carolina lead us through. But first, I just wanted to say, reiterate what Sarah mentioned in the beginning of this presentation this evening, is that this is the end of a phase of work for the master plan, but it is not the end of the master plan process. And so the next steps of this process, we will be refining the goals based upon the feedback, really digging into the details of the conversations we've had in each of these open houses. And then once we get the goals refined, and we'll be having a discussion with the master plan committee about the finalizing of those goals, our team will be diving into the strategies and actions that fall within each of those goals. and thinking about it as a coordinated package to help guide the town towards the future everyone's thinking of. We will be working on that over the spring and summer months. And while we're doing that, we'll continue to have a series of focused engagement and outreach efforts to make sure that the plan is representative. And we have found through our demographics, as I mentioned earlier, that we have underrepresented voices in this process. And so we'll be seeking those voices out specifically over the spring and summer months. In the fall, we'll be returning to you all in a very much public manner with a series of events similar to these open houses, which focus on the draft plans starting to come together in a little more full and whole way. So that will be well publicized, a series of events spanning from September through December, a variety of ways to engage, and keep your eye out for all of that. We'll promote it widely. I wanted to hand it over to Carolina just for a brief plug for anyone that's interested in helping us get the word out to as broad a community cross-section as we can.
Thanks so much, Josh. So I just want to give a brief shout out to all of the outreach working group members. So I see Alex here, Mike, Margaret, and others who've been helping over, a long period of time since October or so. And it's been really exciting to have them be a part of the outreach. And so what we're excited to do for the summer is have another kind of phase of engagement, and you can be a part of that. You can help us create ways to talk to community members, share the goals and draft vision, to have further discussion with members who weren't able to make it, and hopefully have some, potentially socially distanced engagement opportunities as the weather hopefully gets warmer and we're able to be outside more. So if this is really interesting to you, if you love Dedham, if you really want to be a part of the community and building this out and having other people get excited about the master plan process and some of the things that we're talking about tonight, please let us know. We are looking for new outreach working group members to join us, and we'll be drafting an interest form as well as a short sort of understanding of what we're thinking of for a commitment. Again, this is a volunteer opportunity, and you're able to build relationships with others in the community and more importantly, expand the outreach so that we can have more equitable representation of, community members' opinions and what Dedham wants to see in the future. So what we're going to do to everyone that has registered, we'll send out the information, we'll post it on the website, and we'll be in touch soon. But I just wanted to see if there were any comments about that in terms of the outreach working group. Great. Well, excited for all of you to continue the conversation with us. I will put my email in the chat. If you have additional ideas, even if you can't join the group, but have ways for us to connect with people in town, please let me know. Shoot me an email and I'll be sure to get back to you and continue the conversations. We've been having lots of phone conversations and interviews with additional community-based organizations and working groups in town to expand sort of our reach. So we're excited to continue that over the summer and the fall. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Carolina. And I've also put my email in the chat too. If there were comments you felt you didn't want to make, or you missed the chance to, or you didn't feel comfortable to make, please do email them to us and let us know. And we'd be happy to follow up with a conversation and make sure that we've got your input integrated into the plan. So I'll pause there and see if there's any last minute comments, thoughts, or ideas, or any wrap up thoughts any of our co-chairs or others would like to make.
Just want to thank everybody for being here. We had some great discussions.
Great, thank you all very much. With that, we thank you for your time, and we look forward to interacting with you all again as this process continues. So have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.